Okay. Hello, all. My name is Mimi Mudd, and I want to welcome you to our first live webinar of Spring 2025 Family Webinar Series. Tonight, I'm joined by my colleagues, Will Andrews, Executive Director of Residential Life, and E'Quain Rhodes, Assistant Director of Housing Operations. We're excited that you've chosen to join us for tonight's conversation about residential life, housing renewal, and application. Some information before we get started. First, we want to make sure you all know how to submit questions during this webinar. You'll notice that we've given you the ability to ask questions via the Q&A feature in Zoom. Our professional staff will be helping to field these questions to make sure you know how to use the Q&A feature. Please share for the place from which you are joining us tonight, and then we'll name a few of them live on air in just a little bit. Second, we'll be showing a PowerPoint created by our panelists during tonight's webinar, as you see. However, if you prefer to download this PowerPoint and follow along on your own, we are going to share a link in the chat so you all can do that in PDF form. As a note, in the chat feature, we'll be sharing links throughout this webinar and contact information as well. So make sure you are checking that out as we go along. Third, this webinar is being recorded live. So by early next week, you'll see the recording on our Families website, and that's families.woostel.edu. In a moment, we'll hear from our panelists about the residential life housing renewal and application process. If something they say sparks a question, don't forget to send it to us using the Q&A feature. After the presentation, then we'll be moving into that question and answer portion of the evening. So before I pass things along to E'Quain and Will, I'll share some of the places from which you all are joining us tonight. So we have people from Columbus, Ohio, New York, and Kansas City, Missouri. Hello, all. Thank you for joining. Now, since I know you all are here to learn more about housing renewal and the application process, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to E'Quain and Will.
Good evening, everyone, from very cold St. Louis, Missouri. My name is E'Quain Rhodes, pronouns he, him, his. I am the Assistant Director for Housing Operations within Residential Life. I'm joined here by our Executive Director, Will Andrews. And we are going to go ahead and get started with today's presentation. So our topics for today are going to be how to apply for housing here at Washington University Residential Life, some important dates of the process, the cancellation policy, our selection processes, and then at the end, we'll leave some time for Q&A. I will say with the Q&A portion, if you put questions in the Q&A portion, we will attempt to answer them as best as we can. I do ask that you'll see a slide at the end of the presentation. Email your questions to us. That way we can make sure you get the definitive answers that you need. Okay. So first thing is about our housing renewal process. This process is designed to give our rising sophomores, juniors, and seniors some guidance on as they reapply to live with us in residential life spaces during the upcoming academic year. And so this process is fairly in-depth and involved, but it is a comprehensive process designed to give students the most agency possible. The reason our process is designed this way is just due to the variety of housing options that we do provide for our students that choose to live with us here in residential life. So, some important things that your student and you should know before they apply for housing is that they really need to understand and read the terms and conditions. Once a student submits a housing application, a completed housing application, that is a binding contract with terms and conditions attached to it. And so we really are stressing to the students and educating them on making sure that they read the full terms and conditions before they agree to it. For any students who are under the age of 18, they will require parent or guardian approval. And that process is spelled out in the application. So once students get into the housing portal and start to complete the application, if they are under the age of 18, it'll give them the option of saying, hey, yes, I'm under 18. And then it should send you all a separate copy of the application for you all to sign as well for the student. As far as students who are eligible, it's any of our current full-time students and those students who are currently abroad right now. Any student who chooses to live with WashU Res Life, we do our best to guarantee housing for them. Not necessarily always in the place that they want to be housed in, but we do provide them with a space here. And then lastly, there are some provisions for students who are returning from leave of absence as granted by the university. Those considerations are baked into the process as well. And again, that's one of those situations where that's a specific thing for you. Just email our office and we'll make sure that we get you the content or the answer that you most desperately need. All right. So some key dates that we need to be aware of. Number one, the application opened yesterday. So the application is now open. Really, right now, we're going through a process where students are applying and we're trying to encourage them to form those groups. The initial grouping window for those students will close on February 20th, all right? So on that February 20th date, we will still accept applications from students, but after that date, students won't be allowed to enter into the grouping process. We will open that back up starting on February 24th through March the 5th for students who decide, well, this group didn't work out, or I actually want to kind of change what I'm doing. The deadline for students who want to participate in room self-selection is February 24th. Our room self-selection process is one where we allow students to actually log into the portal at an appropriate time slot and select the room that they want to stay in. The cancellation date without penalty, this is very important. Students are allowed to apply and cancel for any reason without penalty up to April 30th, 2025. Beyond April 30, 2025, students are liable for the $1,000 cancellation fee. As far as what constitutes an appropriate means for cancellation ahead of April 30, it's any reason. Students can, like I said, they can apply and cancel and reapply. We ask that they not do that, but if they choose to do that, that is their option. Beyond April 30th, there is a $1,000 cancellation penalty associated with cancel. Our full timeline is much more robust than this. You can find that at reslife.washu.edu. If you scroll down, you'll see there's a little cutout section there on the page that points out for housing selection and renewal. So then we go to our steps to apply. This is what your student will see when they log into the portal. The first step will be they need to complete a bio and include their contact information in there. The second step will be them selecting their housing preferences. I have to reiterate, when it comes to housing preferences, these are we do our best to place students in their top two preferences. However, it is all based on need, and sometimes students don't get their first two preferences, okay? We guarantee housing in a residential life space. We do not guarantee housing in Zetra House on the third floor or a Lapata House on the second floor. So when your students are filling out their preferences, make sure that they know that they need to list their top 5 preferences in the order of importance to them, and we'll do everything we can to make sure they get placed in those areas. Step number 3 is to fill out the roommate questionnaire. This is where students have an opportunity to list some items about themselves where it'll allow us to have a little assistance in pairing them with roommates, but also there's a portion within the actual application where students can go in and match with roommates and find roommates. And so they'll use the information in the roommate questionnaire to assist them with that. Step 4 is going to be the meal plan. There are certain restrictions or qualifications on some of those meal plans, which will be outlined to students as they complete the application. And then step number 5, sign and complete the housing contract. Signing the housing contract means that they are accepting the terms and conditions of that housing contract, okay? The other steps, 6, 7, and 8 are optional steps. So we do require renter's insurance. We have partnered with Grad Guard to provide some renter's insurance coverage for our residents. In the event that you want to use your own private renter's insurance, you are able and eligible to do that as well. Section number 7, or step number 7, is the search and select for roommates. Some students are going to go in as a group of 1 and choose to live by themselves. So it's not necessarily a required step for all of our students in the process to go through and select a roommate. Same thing with section or step number 8, room self-selection. That's going to be a step for those students who are participating in that particular process. So the main steps for the students to follow are steps 1 through 5. Once a student has signed and submitted their housing application in step 5, they will receive email confirmation from our office to their WashU email. I have to reiterate, it's very important. Once a student completes step 5, it is a binding contract. We do allow students to cancel without penalty up to April 30th, 2025. In the event that I send out a quiz on today's presentation, the one question on that would be, what is the cancellation deadline? April 30, 2025. And I believe that's at 11:59 p.m. Central Time, right, Will?
That is correct.
All right, so now we'll talk about our housing options. Like I said, we have a variety of options for our students to participate in. We have our traditional residence hall environment. I have to be very mindful when I use the word traditional because traditional and modern means something distinct here at the university. So we do have our suite style living for our modern students or in our modern or traditional residence halls. We also have our traditional residence hall, which would be, I believe, Beaumont Hall, which would provide single rooms for students with a communal bathroom. As far as our apartments, we have on-campus apartments and off-campus apartments. These are located within Millbrook or Village East or Greenway, Delmar Loop Lofts, University Drive apartments, and Rosedale Court apartments. And then we have our special interest or affinity housing. So that's our living learning communities, of which we have 5 current ones right now, or some students will opt to participate in a fraternity chapter house. Where a student chooses to preference or live really it's determined on their class standing going into next year and what selection process they want to go through. We can go on to the next slide. So when we talk about forming groups, it is very important that students know that they can go in and pretty much select who they want to live with. Here at the university, we have always prided ourselves and promoted ourselves on the fact that we give students as much voice and agency in deciding whom they want to live with and the type of community they want to live in. And so with that, we allow students the opportunity to go in on this process and create and join groups. Like I said, a group can be as small as a group of 1 or as large as a group of 7 for our Millbrook spaces, I believe. With that, we're encouraging students to attend some of our roommate matching events that we'll be hosting in the next few weeks here on campus to find those roommates and to also utilize the roommate finder tool located in the housing portal. There are some recommendations that we have for students as they form their groups specific to their class standing. So if they are a current first-year student and a rising sophomore, those students will have priority for our suite style living here on the South 40 and in some of our spaces over on our North Side community, specifically in Village and La Pata houses. For our seniors, they're going to get priority for the apartments, specifically our off-campus apartments. When students are going in and forming groups for rising sophomores, we encourage them to form a group of 4. We have a considerable number of 4-person spaces on the South 40 for sophomores to be able to sign up for. As it relates to our apartment communities, we're encouraging those rising seniors to form groups of 3. Please note that a majority of our 3-person apartment units are located in those off-campus apartment areas. One thing to note about group formation is we get a lot of questions about, well, I'm a rising sophomore and I want to live with these 2 students who are juniors. That will have an impact on priority for what selection process a student chooses to participate in. So what that means is if rising sophomores are preference for our suite style process here on the South 40 and they add a rising junior to that, it will actually impact their priority for getting that in a negative way. Same thing with our apartment process. Because we preference seniors having highest preference on apartments, what can happen is if 3 or 2 seniors get together with a rising sophomore, it will have an impact on their preference for the apartment selection process as well. So please keep that in mind as you're talking with your students about the housing selection process and group formations. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a variety of processes here. So we have our room self-selection process that is going to be via assigned time slots, much in the same way we assign time slots for students when they move in. In this situation, students won't select the time slot, one will be provided to them by our office. That room self-selection process is from March 3rd through March 6th. The impact of the group size and class year will impact the availability for time slots during room self-selection. We do offer the opportunity for students to regroup in the event that they weren't necessarily satisfied with what the options were. But one thing to note is that time slots are not going to be granted based on when applications are completed or submitted. So a lot of people are feeling that if I submit my application first, we should be granted a time slot first. Our process is set up to be as equitable as possible. So right now we're in the initial stages of collecting applications and group formation. Once we get to the group or the room self-selection process after group formation is done, then time slots will be assigned at random. As far as our administrative assignments process, that is for our students who did not take part in the room self-selection process. And that's where members of our team will actually go in and select the housing for those students based off of the information they provided on their housing preferences and their roommate questionnaire. One thing to note is that a number of our students do have housing accommodations. One thing to know about this process is that that process is actually managed by WashU's Office of Disability Resources. And so a lot of times students and parents will reach out to Res Life to let us know about a need for accommodations. Please note that we will always redirect you to disability resources as they are the ones that approve or rather make decisions about accommodations. Once this accommodation is assigned or determined, they will let not only residential life know, but other areas of the university community know so that we can make those accommodations. For us in residential life, we will place students based on a need and not necessarily their preferences for those accommodations. So what that means is living on or off campus is not necessarily viewed as an accommodation that is going to be granted by WashU Disability Resources. For more clarification or information on that, I encourage you to reach out to the Office of Disability Resources. Their contact information can be found on that housing renewal and selection webpage. Just click on the link in the page that will take you to the section on housing accommodations. Okay, so if you've not picked up on it, I really have to stress our cancellation policy. It's very important. For the academic year. Again, the cancellation deadline is April 30, 2025. After that, students are subject to the $1,000 cancellation fee. It is, what happens is I oversee our customer service functions in our office and our front desk, and I am trying to mitigate the number of calls that I get after April 30 about the cancellation. So I'm trying to let everyone know up front about our cancellation deadline. And so if you have any questions specific to the process that I'm certain that I've raised here, that we're probably going to get into a number of them here in the Q&A, please email them. I love talking to you all on the phone. Sometimes a lot of people don't realize that it's me they're talking to on the phone. If you send emails to this inbox, we respond to every email. Please note that sometimes it takes us a little bit of time to get to the emails because I want to make sure I'm giving you the most direct and specific answer to the questions that you have. So please email us. That way I can more easily get your questions answered. If you call our office and start asking me 100 questions, you'll probably hear me say, okay, type all of that up and send it to me in an email because I have other people I need to talk to on the phone. All right. But that is all I have for now. It's a pretty general overview of the process. It's more in depth on that website. It's a very intuitive process for our students, but I think now is our opportunity for Q&A. And yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, E'Quain, for all that information. So a reminder to all of our attendees, continue to submit those questions through the Q&A feature in Zoom. And I have a question to go ahead and kick us off in the Q&A portion. So would a WashU student be able to live in residential life housing for their entire undergraduate career if they chose to?
Yes. Yes, we guarantee, Will's probably gonna, you stop me if I say it the wrong way, Will, but we guarantee housing for any student that applies.
Yes, we have enough housing for the demand of students who are requesting residential life housing. Um, so before we go on to the next question, I just want to share, E'Quain definitely did share a lot about our cancellation policy and the deadlines and everything. Again, the policies in place so that we can ensure that the students who want to live in residential life housing have that priority. So we kind of add, if you want to live, because there will be students who will weigh out options of living off campus versus living in residential life managed housing. And we want the students who want, majority of students choose, especially in our sophomore year, to live in residential life housing. So it's really for us to have it in place so we can ensure that students who go through our process are the ones who want to go through the process. Um, so yes, we have housing for students who want to live in residential life housing throughout their time here at WashU.
Great, thank you. Okay, we received a few different questions about what happens for students who are studying abroad. So can you speak to what that looks like if a student is studying abroad but would like to live in residential life housing for the semester that they are here on campus?
Yes, so it depends on what semester the student's gonna be abroad. So if a student's gonna be abroad for fall semester, we encourage them to just go ahead and participate in that study abroad program. We will email all of those students sometime halfway through fall semester and encourage them to fill out a spring application. When they complete the spring application, there'll be a section in there for them to list their housing preferences and if they have a roommate preference. For students who are going to be studying abroad in the spring, we encourage them to go through this academic year process like all of the other students. And then once they're approved for our study abroad program, we'll actually request that they cancel their application. And then with that, students who are approved for study abroad, we grant them a cancellation without the cancellation fee.
And confirming that's true if you're studying, well, fall or spring study abroad. Okay,
Yeah.
great, because we have some questions specific to fall study abroad. Okay, you mentioned living learning communities in the presentation. Can you tell us a little bit more about what those are and how a student can join them?
Sure, yeah. So we have 5 living learning community options right now. And they are based on a variety of different options or communities. Give me a moment to get the list. That's something I keep in my mind, but to be able to list all of them in order, I want to make sure I get them all correct. And so we have 5 that are current right now. Kaleidoscope, which is for our LGBTQIA plus students. We have Constellation, which is affinity community or a living learning community for our students that are affiliated with our Taylor Stars scholarship program. Lotus is for our students who identify as Asian American but want to just live in a community of students with shared interests. Sakana, which is our student-led community, which is designed to engage students around our Muslim American experience. And then Hamsini, which is one for our students who are part of the African diaspora and want to, delve more deeply into those things. And so the way our living learning communities work is that it's same process as our standard housing selection process, but it just gives students an opportunity to live and learn. And so our living learning communities they have specific programming tailored to the interest assigned to that particular community. And so a lot of times we'll have faculty come in and provide presentations or do programming within the community. Each LLC is assigned a faculty advisor, which is a full-time faculty member here at the university, as well as a staff advisor that is assigned to assist the students in building out that specialized living environment for them. So those are the current ones we have now. We are always open to expansion of those in the future, just based off of really student request and demand.
Great, thank you. Okay, we had two more questions pop up about study abroad, kind of in response to what you said. So I'll move to those now. So they wanted to clarify that you only have to pay for the residential life housing for the semester that you are living in it.
That is correct.
Okay, and then are you limited on the type of housing that may or may not be available if you're studying abroad?
You're not limited. You'll go through the process just like every other student, but school approved, WashU school approved study abroads are allowed to cancel their contract in the spring if they're going abroad in the spring in our process. So if they only need housing for the fall, they will have housing for the fall and then be eligible to apply for housing for the following fall.
Great.
So guess what, parents? No subleasing. It's a great opportunity for your student to continue to live with residential life, go abroad, and then be eligible to apply for housing to live in community with their friends the following year.
Wonderful. And then the last study abroad related question for now, at least, is does this impact their roommates? Do like everyone in that space need to be studying abroad to live together?
So they don't, but what I would share and is when your students select to live in a space with a student they know that's going to go abroad, students have to be prepared to know that we will assign that space at any point. So just because of your friend leaves doesn't mean that the space isn't open. So as we get roommate changes or preferences change, we have a room change period. So what we do see a lot here on campus is friends pair up with other people who they know that are going abroad. For the students who may not go abroad, they may not want to change up roommates immediately because two of their roommates chose to go abroad. So that leaves two open spots in a student's room. So again, the students kind of figure that out, but this is for you parents. Some students do weigh out their options of roommates based off of knowing if their friends are going to go abroad or not.
Thank you. Okay, we received a question about another type of special housing, fraternity and sorority life housing. They were wondering where they can find more information about what the options are, and also is that housing application process the same or is that different?
So, fraternity housing right now, they apply just like every other student. It's one application. At this time, we do not have sorority housing, but the process of room placement is within the individual chapters themselves. So, I would encourage any student wanting to participate in the chapter housing process to reach out to those organizations to understand how placement and membership works in the fraternity, in those fraternity houses.
I also see a question asking, which I can answer, if we're going to share this presentation at the end of the webinar. So you can find a link to this PowerPoint at the top of the chat. It's the first link in the chat. And then, yes, this is also being recorded and it will be posted to the family's website by early next week, if not by the end of this week. So all this information you can go back and review because I know it's a lot and there's important deadlines and everything, so it will be available later as well. Okay, you all mentioned sophomores have preference for suites and seniors have preference for apartments. We have a parent or family member wondering if juniors receive preference for a specific type of housing.
You want me to jump in there, E'Quain, or do you want to come to
This is one of those.
Okay. So parents, juniors have priority too. So We have a mixture of apartments that Equan indicated earlier. We have a limited number of seniors that live with us. So when we think about our junior placements, they have priority over many of all of the apartments that we have in our portfolio. Um, Sophomores, again, they do have preference when it comes to suites, but you do get many sophomores who also want the apartments because they want the kitchens. But we're not going to prioritize a sophomore receiving a kitchen over a junior. So when you think of some of our living communities like our lofts, I would say the lofts is probably our lofts apartment. It was probably our last newest residential facility that we built. Um, it's beautiful. Has kitchens, roommates, pair ups, living space, underground parking. That building community is probably made up of 85% juniors, with the rest being seniors. So it really kind of turns into a junior community. Same with our Greenway apartments, our U Drive. Um, you really see our seniors really go for our single units, and then, of course, we have our Village East, which is on campus. But juniors do have priority too, because there's a small number of seniors that we have living with us. They do have priority in picking out apartments on and off campus.
Great, thank you. Okay, and then there was a follow-up question about what percent of juniors get apartments at the lofts.
I would say that the lofts is made up of over 85% juniors. Um, and again, and that's just not the lofts. Also in Greenway, U Drive, many of our units, the number of seniors we have kind of spread throughout our portfolio, but especially in our off-campus apartments, it's made up of majority juniors.
Great. Okay. And then for people who might have more specific questions about what do these residential halls look like? What are their floor plans? Maybe what types of things are provided in those rooms or suites? Where can students, parents, family members go to find those things?
So on our website, there is a link at the top that says Living at WashU. And on there, the submenu for residential life facilities. And that page is going to provide as much information as we have on available to share with everyone. I will say that in a lot of our, not a lot, some of our spaces off campus, we are currently working to develop photos and floor plans for those spaces. The reality is our spaces, we undergo configuration changes and renovation and building projects each year. And so in order for us to get the floor plans and updated items for those, we have to go through a process through university facilities planning and management. And so we are aware that people are wanting to see these spaces. And please know that we are working to provide those resources within the confines and constraints of university policy and procedure. One thing that we will note with floor plans, we we want people to have the availability of them, but we also have to look at it from a matter of safety and security, where we don't necessarily want to just publicize our floor plans and have them out public for everyone to see. Currently, students can see a lot of these South 40 specific floor plans and spaces. And that's just something where we're having ongoing discussions about the availability of floor plans and photos for those spaces. But currently, you should be able, on that website, Living at WashU under residential life facilities, you should be able to take virtual tours of our lofts and Greenway properties. And please know that I am actively working on getting updated floor plans for the lofts, Greenway, U Drive, Village House, La Pata, and those areas.
I would just add, you talked about what are those amenities, and for the parents that are on here today, I want you to know that, like right now, it's snowing. We had our areas. Well, it snowed last week, but the shoveling, clearing the streets, making sure sidewalks were clear at residential.
Bro. So I'll take over from here. So we our university's landscaping and facilities team came in immediately. So we got about a foot of snow on last Sunday. Um, Sunday evening, they were here shoveling and doing snow and ice abatement. And so right now, if you look at campus and walk through our campus, you can see where there are areas where you could tell we had snow. But Monday, when we all, were, for those of us who were able to make it to the office on Monday, there was, you know, our facilities team does a really great job of making sure that our facilities are ready to provide the services and accommodations that we have.
I'm so sorry. I got kicked out for a second. But no, Equan's correct.
Yep.
I just wanted to share that there are quite a few amenities and they're on our website. We're going to be highlighting them with your students as they continue to apply for housing. But there are perks of living with residential life, and we want to make sure students understand it, you understand it, things that they don't have to worry about, such as internet, again, clearing of a sidewalk, adding resources where there's 24-hour maintenance, lockout support. We have full-time staff that live within our buildings that support your residents while they're living here. So just quite a few resources that are different than if they did not live in residential life housing.
Great. Thank you both. Okay, and then one more question back to I would say kind of class specific housing. So if a sophomore is wanting, their priority is access to a kitchen, but knowing that they're a little bit lower in that priority for getting an apartment, is there another type of housing you'd recommend that they maybe put first if that
So,
kitchen is kind of what they really want?
so some sophomores will have access to some of the kitchens. What I will tell you, what in Millbrook, for example, we have apartments that have double bedrooms that have kitchens in them. And if your sophomore student group is open to potentially living in a double uh, where it has access to a kitchen, then they will probably have high preference of selecting that space. But again, we're going to prioritize juniors and seniors in the selection of apartments first. But typically, juniors and seniors don't want to live in the double. So there are options where sophomores will have options to pick kitchens. But in each of our communities, we have community kitchens throughout all of our buildings. So all students living in residential life housing have access to kitchen space to be able to prepare the types of food that they want. And we have gourmet style kitchens, especially in some of our communities. So, yeah.
Great. And then do you all know off the top of your head what percentage of sophomores live in Millbrook or Village East? Or maybe where are they normally higher, percentage wise?
So I'll make it very clear. Sophomores typically do not get an opportunity to live in Village East in their sophomore year. It's made up predominantly of juniors and seniors. Um, we will have occasionally, probably maybe about 20 to 25% of sophomores that may have an opportunity to live in the Millbrook community. But again, it's a small number. Most as E'Quan highlighted earlier in our presentation, will continue to live on the South 40 in Village and La Plata. And then a couple, like I said, Millbrook would probably make up about 20% of sophomores that typically are assigned to those double rooms within Millbrook if they really want a kitchen.
Thank you. Okay, so I know you said, Equan, that kind of group size that you generally recommend is 4. We received a question if a student has a group total of 3, and they want to live in a suite that requires 4 people, is that 4th person randomly assigned, or are there other opportunities for them to kind of find that 4th roommate? What would you recommend?
I would recommend that they find a fourth roommate for that group. Because if So if they are wanting to go into a 4-person space, but they have a group of 3, it won't allow them to actually move forward in that process. They would need a 4th person in order for that grouping to take place. So we would encourage them to go to one of our roommate matching events or use the roommate matching or roommate finding tool on the housing portal to select someone. And then if they don't go through the room selection, like the self-selection process, there's always the administrative assignments process where, students can say, hey, we really want to stay with this person. As long as that person has said, yes, I want to live in this group with these other 3 people, then we do our best to place them together.
I would just like just to echo or share, dear parents, there are plenty of students out here looking for groups. Please encourage. You'll see on our website what E'Quain shared was we have some matching, not matching. What's E'Quain? What's the new title?
Matching, yeah. We don't call them mixers anymore because
Oh,
yeah.
So, but there are going to be students who are going to show up, students who are looking for other group members. We highly encourage them to reach out to their RAs because the RA will know how others within the building are talking about their groups. If they really need also additional assistance, we encourage them also to talk with their RCD, their community director. Again, there are going to be many opportunities, many ways for groups to form and to find other people who are looking to form groups with other people.
Great, thank you. Okay, how can students submit a concern, maintenance requests, etc., for residential life housing areas to the residential life staff? We had a parent family member mention a concern that was raised in the Stud Life newspaper. So just wanting to highlight, how can students share concerns with Res Life staff and get those addressed?
Sure. So a student can always go onto the Res Life webpage and submit a maintenance request or a housekeeping request for any issue. Our maintenance team reviews the housekeeping request, the maintenance request rather, on an ongoing basis. The same thing with that housekeeping team. So if they go in there and submit it, it will immediately and directly sent to a variety of people in the community, namely their RCD, the assistant director for that specific building, but then also our facilities team with a copy of that as well.
Great. Okay, now we're going to move to some questions about off-campus, like housing options. So can you share resources available to assist students and their families with off-campus housing options? And maybe we take this as like Res Life off-campus, not Res Life off-campus. And then we'll talk about transportation options after that. But yeah, let's start with resources to help people kind of find those off-campus opportunities.
Sure. So I'm glad you mentioned the distinction for Res Life off campus versus non-Res Life off campus. We do have a number of spaces available that are Res Life managed spaces that have our residential life staff in them in our off-campus areas. But then also the university does provide some non-Res Life, but still WashU managed housing options. Those are with a group here at the university called Quadrangle. And so if you go, and Parallel, sorry. But if you go there, the information for those can be found at the bottom of the Housing Renewal webpage where it says non-Res Life housing options there. And so students will be able to go there and view options as well. There's also a program that we have at the university, the apartment referral service, where it is a partnership with the Office of Real Estate here at the university that essentially serves as a hosting page for private landlords for students who just choose not to live with residential life or a WashU specific housing option. And one other thing I want to share, and it's kind of a cheap plug because I oversee this area, is our neighborhood care program here at the university. And that CARE is an acronym: Connect, Advocate, the R, and the E. I know E is engaged. I should know what the R stands for. Long day, sorry. But our neighborhood care program provides university staff that live in communities in these off-campus areas as neighborhood liaisons, and we provide a variety of services and resources for those students and really learning how to become good neighbors and good tenants and really establishing good tenant and landlord relationships as well. So it's not a situation where even if a student decides that they don't want to live with residential life, where they're kind of just floating off there on their own without support for the university. We do provide support for all of our undergraduate students that choose to live here or choose to attend the university rather.
And
And
then
then there was,
up, transportation options that
yes.
WashU provides.
Yes, so the university does provide transportation via campus shuttle system to and from all of our residential areas. And so those shuttles are free. They run, I want to say as early as 6 a.m. till about maybe 2 a.m. the next day. The shuttle schedule changes based off of the time in the semester and the academic year. But students are permitted to board that shuttle wherever a shuttle stop is located in that community or neighborhood. Typically, the shuttle stop will be right at the main entrance for those spaces. So if a student is assigned to the lofts and they live on 6200 Enright, the shuttle stop is literally, they exit out the front door to Enright, the shuttle stop is right there. But then also, the university has partnered, and we have a longstanding partnership with Metro Transit, where all of our students are provided with a U-Pass. Metro Transit operates several Metro bus routes that also connect students from the main Danforth campus here to our off-campus areas, but then also some of the shopping areas located over in Brentwood, Richmond Heights, and Maplewood as well. And that is free of charge to students as well, in addition to the MetroLink light rail system, which will transport students from the main campus on 2 stops and transport them throughout the region as well.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, we had a follow-up question about Millbrook doubles. The parent is wondering, what is a double? Is that sharing a room in an apartment, or what does that mean?
So yes, I'll clarify that. So let's say it's a 4-person apartment, or a 5-person apartment, 2 of the rooms will be double and 1 room will be a single. So there's 5 people in an apartment, 4 people are in the doubles and 1 person's in the single. So yes, we have a mixture, very variety of rooms in apartments that are double size within Millbrook.
Okay, great. Now we have some questions related to summer. So first, if a student is doing a summer internship in St. Louis, are there housing options provided for them by WashU? And if so, where should they go for those?
Yes.
More information is coming out. More information is coming out soon. Students will see some advertisements for summer school housing, and they'll apply through our summer conference program that manage summer housing. So yes, we have plenty of housing. So any student needing to stay in St. Louis for research, intern, take classes, summer school, summer session 1, 2, 3, or 4, we have housing available for students to apply for.
And then the other summer related question has to do with storage options. So what do you all recommend if they're not from St. Louis, they don't live in St. Louis, but they want to store their items over the summer in St. Louis? What do you all recommend for that?
We have an approved vendor list that E'Quain's team actually, he will be sending out communication to your students that will have our approved vendors on it. But students can choose to store their items with whomever vendor they would like, but we have a dedicated vendor that we give access to be able to assist and help streamline some of the process of storing belongings. But in my experience so far here, I've seen some students will gather a group of their friends, they will rent a storage unit off campus and share the cost between their roommates. I've also seen some parents drive all the way to St. Louis, pack it up on the U-Haul, and carry it all back home. So, we will have options and recommendations for students that E'Quain will send out. in the Res Life Reporter so students know what their options are, and are able to make arrangements. But yeah.
And on that subject, it is so we just reopened for spring semester. Um, I am hesitant to send this information out too early because I think it sends a certain message, but we do close on May 8th. So that is our day for when our halls and apartments close for our students. And so information will be coming out about end of semester uh, processing and plans and preparations. That should be coming out as early as next month, just so that we make sure students have all of the information at hand that they need in order to appropriately plan for the end of semester. But we do close on Thursday, May 8th at noon. So parents, please keep that date and time in mind for as you make preparations for the end of the semester as well.
Yeah. Okay. Can you all tell us a little bit about the role of resident advisor or RA and residential community director RCD? What role that plays in the residential experience?
So we would say they are the center of the residential experience for our students. Residential advisors are student leaders who are hired for that position. They have to be either a junior or senior for that role. They go through a very extensive application and recruitment and training process, and they are there to provide a high level of resources and support for our students who choose to live in our communities. We have RAs that participate in the program for our on-campus communities, and then we also have RAs in our off-campus areas. We do know that the students who are our first-year students tend to need a little bit more guidance and support, so we're going to have a higher number of RAs in our on-campus areas, especially on the South 40, than we would in our off-campus areas. As far as the residential community directors, these are all master's degree holding professional educators who have dedicated their careers to the study of college student development and are here to provide support for the RAs as they build out the residential experience. And so each community has a specific residential community director, like I said, who is a professional who holds a master's degree. They go through an extensive training protocol and process each year, and they are the residential experience.
Great, thank you. Okay, our last question for the evening, and this is kind of a good opinion question for you both. What would you all recommend? What can parent and family members do to help their students through the housing renewal and application process?
Tell them to visit the housing portal and the housing renewal and selection webpage. And if they have questions, to ask Res Life directly. A lot of times students will get an answer to a question that's specific for them, and then they will share that with their peers, and then they think that's gonna apply to their situation too, and their situation may be different. So I would encourage the parents to have the students to check the resources that we've made available for them. I am, I'll tell them myself, I'm the person responsible for the information on the website and in the housing portal. And so I am in there with a team of people on a frequent basis trying to make sure that we have the most up-to-date information possible. One thing that we're doing new this year is we're actually including in the housing portal the number of spaces we have in particular areas and the number of students who have identified via the group selection process, hey, I'm interested in a 4-person group, or I'm interested in a 3-person group. Just to make sure that we're providing students with as much information as possible. Sometimes it can be overwhelming, but we're providing them with enough information as possible so that they can make the most informed decision for them. So I would encourage them to avail themselves to those resources.
So I would say, so to the parents here, thank you again for just being a part of this webinar. But want to say is be a support for your student. Try to take away some of the anxiety that they're going to feel around going sometimes around this process. We want the students, it's a fun process. It's exciting to think about what next semester is going to look like. And I think probably one of the biggest things is just to encourage a student to stay positive, focus on their academics, and know that if they don't get what they want in the beginning, it's not the end of the world. Again, one thing, and I'm not sure if we shared this, we're going to have more applications than we're going to have bed spaces in the beginning. And we know how many students traditionally are going to cancel, not come, or so forth. So again, as they're going through the process, we just ask for you all to be patient with us, encourage your student to stay positive. And again, as E'Quain talked about earlier, ranking those preferences. If a student's not able to go in and pick, the team works really hard to try to get them in their first, second, or third choice in the process. As individuals' decisions change, if they're going to live in res life or not, spaces open up. Some students decide to go abroad. That's going to open up another space. I call it putting together a puzzle. And the puzzle sometimes doesn't fit until we get the right piece. So, yeah, I think just encourage your student to stay positive, stay focused, don't get discouraged through the process. And if again, we have a room change period. Students can submit a room change. And if we're able to make the change happen, it may not be until summer, but the goal is to get them in a space. And then if we're able to move around in the summer, which traditionally we're able to do, we're able to usually make things happen.
Great. Thank you again so much, Will and E'Quain, for all the information and your answers to questions. Families, we hope you found the information valuable and helpful as you support your student through this process of housing renewal and application. Just as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and it will be shared on our family's website by end of this week or early next week. And our next webinar in the family webinar series is a conversation about career engagement. And it is 3 weeks from today, so Wednesday, February 5th at 5:30 p.m. Central. You can register for that webinar and also check out the other two that are going to be pre-recorded at families.washu.edu. And I hope everyone has a good night. Thank you all again, and goodbye.